By Canadian. Who will be the next Prime Minister of Canada? I was looking at the options in the leadership race for the Federal Liberal Party, and not only did I realize I didn't really know who any of these four candidates were, but I also couldn't find a comprehensive breakdown of who they are and what policies they're running on. So, I decided to start a political YouTube channel, as you do. Like and subscribe if you enjoy this breakdown leading up to the Liberal leadership election coming up tomorrow, Saturday, March 8th, and at the end I'll give you information on how to vote. So this all starts with Justin Trudeau. But to explain what's happening with Justin Trudeau today, we need to do a quick background on his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So a lawyer by trade, having received a degree from Harvard, after being elected to the House of Commons in 1965, Pierre Trudeau was appointed a Minister of Justice and Attorney General in 1967, where he liberalized divorce and abortion laws and decriminalized homosexuality. His outgoing personality resulted in Trudeau-mania in 1968, helping him to win the leadership of the Liberal Party. He was described in the Vancouver Sun article as a swinging young bachelor when he became Prime Minister in 1968. It was kind of like Beatlemania, but instead of Ringo and George, there was Cuba and Russia. Much like the Liberal race of today, the then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, who's the namesake of Toronto's airport, was stepping down. This meant that the winner of the Liberal leadership race would become the Prime Minister by default. And yes, that's what's happening right now. The winner of this Saturday's election will determine the next Prime Minister of Canada. So Pierre Trudeau's personality dominated Canadian federal politics from the late 60s to the mid-1980s, where he won the 1968, 1972, and 1974 elections, narrowly losing in 1979 before winning again in 1980. I know, how did he lose in 79? And let me explain. In December 79, just 6 months after Joe Clark's Conservatives beat Trudeau in the 79 election, Clark's minority government could not collect enough votes for the House of Commons to survive, which triggered another election to elect members of the House of Commons. The main reason for the loss of votes lay in Clark government's introduction of an increase on the gas tax by 18 cents per gallon or 4 cents per liter. So although Pierre Trudeau had announced his resignation as leader of the Liberal Party following the 1979 defeat, there had been no Liberal leadership vote as of yet. So he quickly rescinded his resignation and won a majority government in the ensuing 1980 election. Papa Trudeau eventually retired prior to the 1984 election, which coincided with the year of his divorce. So what did Papa Trudeau do? Well, he was known for expanding social programs, decreasing the deficit, overseeing the creation of Petro-Canada, controversially leading to a rise in Western alienation, as well as invoking the War Measures Act in Quebec and rejecting Quebec's sovereignty proposal in the 1980 referendum. He also pioneered official French bilingualism and Canadian multiculturalism, which fostered the pan-Canadian identity we have today. But Papa Trudeau's most well-known contribution to Canada came in his final term, the one he almost didn't serve, when he patriated the Constitution and established the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which achieved full Canadian sovereignty. So that's the dad. Now let's get into where we are today. Justin Trudeau, the eldest son of Pierre Trudeau, a former drama teacher, was elected leader of the Liberal Party back in 2013. He led the Liberal Party to a majority government in 2015 and was re-elected in 2019 and 2021 with minority governments. A confidence and supply agreement was reached between the Liberal Party and the New Democrats on March 22, 2022, which formed a coalition government. This is a common practice being implemented currently in Spain, Sweden, Poland, Indonesia, and more countries. It isn't anything underhanded, but it soured the public reputation of the New Democrats as they were blocking a no-confidence vote through 2022 to 2024. Through 2024, support for the Liberal Party sharply declined. And when I say sharp, I mean like samurai sword. I mean T-Rex tooth sharp. This was some Nortel shit. Liberals also lost 3 by-elections in what were considered safe seats. In the Toronto St. Paul's riding in Toronto, the La Salle-Armand-Verdun riding in Montreal, and the Cloverdale-Langley City riding in Vancouver throughout 2024, which led to more calls for Trudeau to step down, initiated by MP Wayne Long. On September 4th, the NDP withdrew their confidence and supply agreement with the Liberals officially, though they did not commit to a motion of non-confidence, which further delayed the vote and garnered colorful reactions. In October 2024, Trudeau faced a caucus revolt when 24 Liberal MPs signed a letter demanding his resignation. Trudeau remained defiant and unequivocal in his plans to lead the party in the next election. Like Simba, Justin just wanted to be like his daddy. And like Simba, Daddy isn't here to save you. On December 16, 2024, hours before the Liberal government's fall economic statement, Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister, like a Vice President, resigned due to her opposition to Trudeau's fiscal policy. This was extremely unexpected, particularly since Freeland was previously a very loyal member of Trudeau's cabinet. This unsurprisingly led to further calls for Trudeau to step down. 4 days later, on December 20th, Trudeau conducted a major cabinet reshuffle. Nevertheless, pressure on Trudeau continued to build. He didn't realize his favorite single by Queen and David Bowie was becoming his reality, and if he was hot in 2015, he was now on ice. Ice, baby. Over 20 Liberal MPs publicly called for Trudeau to resign, and over 50 signed a private letter asking him to resign. In the end, they both meant the same damn thing. The same day, we're still on December 20th. The NDP publicly committed to introducing a non-confidence motion against the government. The Ontario, Atlantic, and Quebec regional caucuses called for Trudeau to resign on December 21st, 2024. Christmas was on December 25th, 2024. It wasn't a very Merry Christmas for Justin. But who knows? A new year may mean a new page being turned. Maybe Justin can wiggle his way out of this just like Dad and come back and complete his greatest achievement as Prime Minister. The haters won't even know what hit him. Justin's back. And on January 6, 2025, Trudeau announced his intention to resign as party leader and Prime Minister shortly after his successor is chosen. Again, the situation echoes the Liberal leadership race in 1968 when Daddy Trudeau succeeded Lester B. Pearson to become Prime Minister, except the other way around. So that's how we got into the shit show we call March. Now let's shift our focus to the Saturday, March 8th vote for Liberal leadership, tomorrow's vote. Why does it matter? Because this will, until October, be the new PM, like it or not. Now the reasoning behind this logic is simple, and it's why in the past Pierre Trudeau took Pearson's spot. We vote for the party, not the person. Why should you care if you think Poilievre will win in October? Because as we've seen, just because another party doesn't win, doesn't mean it doesn't hold power. NDP got Joe Clark out of here in 1979, and they've never won a federal election. Last year, the Liberal NDP coalition government rejected a federal election. So, it matters. This leads us to today, where we have Frank Baylis, pronounced Bay, like the store or the body of water, and Liss, like lisp, but without the P and without a lisp. Mark Carney, pronounced car like the metal thing that goes fast on highways, and knee like the excruciating little bit of hell in everyone's body that activates when they turn 30. Chrystia Freeland, pronounced free like the trade agreement I thought we had with the US, and land like that thing that rocks pop out of. And Karina Gould, pronounced goo like that weird sticky stuff that scientists always have in their labs, and oot like short form for long distance. Kids, long distance was this thing where you would make a phone call and you'd have to pay extra because these are the 4 candidates for Liberal leadership in Canada and the coveted Prime Minister spot until, or maybe after, the federal election in October. So who are these 4 candidates and what are the policies they plan on executing? Well, I'm glad you asked. Frank Baylis is an MP from the Pierre Fonds Dollard riding in Montreal who also serves as the vice chairman of the executive board of directors of Baylis Medical Technologies. Baylis Technologies, started by his mother in the early 80s, sold its cardiovascular medical devices business for US $1.75 billion. Under Baylis' co-leadership with his partner and former classmate Chris Shaw, Baylis Medical has grown to an estimated 874 employees with offices in Montreal, Toronto, Boston, London, and Munich. Born in Montreal, Baylis holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Waterloo in engineering and was awarded the Harry Jerome Businessman of the Year Award in 2024 and was the Saint Laurent Chamber of Commerce Business Personality of the Year in 2022. Since 2007, Baylis has been a producer with Righteous Films, previously named Walk of Fame Entertainment, a video production house whose mission is to develop and produce entertaining and social environmental films, which will also allow us to discover other cultures or characters from diverse backgrounds. Baylis is credited as a writer, co-producer, and actor in Righteous Pictures' indie film Transit from 2008, and also has a writer and executive producer credited on Generation Wolf from 2016. Currently, Baylis resides in West Montreal with his wife and 3 children. The same day as Trudeau's announcement, January 6th, Frank Baylis announced his intention to run for Liberal Party leader. He's the first black leadership candidate in the federal Liberal Party's history. Frank Baylis is endorsed by 4 members of Parliament, as well as municipal politicians, his sister, and his friend Christian de la Cortina, a Canadian actor and producer. Frank Baylis is running under the campaign slogan, Prosperity for All Canadians. Frank Baylis intends to limit senators to 10-year terms and MPs to 10-year terms with prolonged period in between, create a second House of Commons chamber for debate, redistribute power to MPs instead of party leaders, invest in Canadian universities, businesses, and incubators, decrease government debt, recognize Palestine and invest in rebuilding Gaza, establish 2 west-east pipelines to transport Albertan natural gas to Europe and Asia, invest in Canada's electrical transmission grid, and research and development for renewable energy, work in provinces to modernize healthcare using artificial intelligence, spend 2% of GDP on defense, the NATO target, by investing in research, growing military through increasing troop wages and benefits, and increasing number of peacekeepers, support a CAN-ZUC economic bloc, refuse to offer Trump concessions for tariffs, invest in large projects like social housing, rail projects, and expanded public transit to create jobs, tie number of new immigrants to housing availability, incentivize local governments to achieve housing development targets, modify national building codes to streamline approvals of modular homes, eliminate the budget deficit by increasing productivity, increase amount allowed in first home savings accounts, and scrap capital gains tax increases. Mark Carney is an economist and politician who served as 8th governor to the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013 and 120th governor of the Bank of England from 2013 to 2020. Born in the Northwest Territories, Carney received his undergraduate at Harvard and his MA and PhD at the University of Oxford and Nuffield College, all in economics. He also played backup goalie for the Harvard varsity hockey team. Just wanted to point that out. After working 13 years with Goldman Sachs, working in the Toronto, Tokyo, New York, Boston, and London offices, he left in 2003 to join the Bank of Canada as a deputy governor before being appointed the governor in 2008, at the time becoming the youngest central bank governor among both the G20 and the G8 countries. During his tenure, which started right at the beginning of the 2008 global financial crisis, the Canadian economy outperformed those of its G7 peers during the crisis. Canada was the first G7 nation to have both its GDP and employment recover to pre-crisis levels. Mark Carney's actions as governor of the Bank of Canada are said to have played a major role in helping Canada avoid the worst impacts of the financial crisis, apparently. On November 26, 2012, Chancellor of the Exchequer George Osborne announced the appointment of Carney as the Governor of Bank of England. He was the first non-Briton to be appointed to that role since the Bank of England was established in 1694, which even Wayne Gretzky would say is a pretty wild stat. In the 2013 Liberal Party of Canada election, which Justin Trudeau won, there was speculation that Mark Carney would run, but he ultimately declined to do so. On September 9, 2024, Carney was named by Justin Trudeau to the chair of the Liberal Party of Canada's Leadership Task Force on Economic Growth. On January 16, 2025, Mark Carney officially announced that he was running in the 2025 Liberal Party of Canada leadership election. Carney also announced that he'd be stepping down from all executive, board, and advisory positions that he was part of in order to focus on his leadership campaign. If elected, he would become the first Canadian Prime Minister to have never served in prior elected office. Mark Carney is endorsed by all these people, and all these people. It's a lot. Including internationally, Michael Bloomberg, the NYC mayor from 2002 to 2013. Mark Carney is running under the campaign slogan, "It's time to build." Mark Carney intends to replace the consumer carbon tax with an incentive program to reward green choices while keeping tax on large industrial emitters. Spend 2% of GDP on defense, the NATO target, by 2030 by investing in Canadian-made defense equipment and strengthening Canada's Arctic presence through dual-use infrastructure, example, deep-water ports and runways. Scrap capital gains tax increase and cut taxes for middle class. Cut red tape on building projects and interprovincial trade. Support the concept of a west-east oil pipeline. Run a small deficit to invest in Canada's economy while balancing operational spending, like government programs, federal transfers, and debt service charges over the next 3 years. Impose dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. Expand Canada's energy infrastructure to be less dependent on foreign suppliers. Double the pace of new housing construction over a decade. Scrap GST on new homes worth up to $1 million for first-time buyers. Cap immigration until it returns to pre-pandemic trends. And create 2 new Arctic military bases. Chrystia Freeland was mentioned earlier as Trudeau's deputy prime minister who lost confidence in him and stepped down from her post in 2024. Chrystia Freeland was born in Alberta and received a bachelor's at Harvard where she studied Russian history and literature. Now, this story is insane, but from what I could tell, it's 100% true. So in the 88-89, best year ever, school year, when Freeland was participating in an exchange student program, she worked with Bill Keller of the New York Times to document the Bikivinya graves, an unmarked mass grave where Soviet secret police disposed of tens of thousands of rebels. The official Soviet line was that it was a Nazi gravesite, but through her language studies, Freeland interviewed locals who witnessed the killings prior to the World War II Nazi invasion, which linked the atrocities to the Soviet Stalinist regime. This attracted the KGB, who used newspapers to attack Freeland and tapped her phone calls. She had to use a diplomat at the Canadian embassy in Moscow to send material abroad, worked with foreign journalists on exposing Soviet life to the West, and even organized anti-Soviet marches and rallies within the Soviet Union. This was all while she was an undergraduate on an exchange program. By the time her activism within Ukraine came to an end, Freeland was blacklisted from returning to USSR after visiting England and had become the subject of a high-level case study from the KGB on how much damage a single determined individual could inflict on the Soviet Union. A 2021 Globe and Mail article quoted a report by a former officer of the KGB, which had described Freeland as a remarkable individual, erudite, sociable, and persistent, and inventive in achieving her goals. Her? I had no idea. I mean, she should lead with that. After returning to the West in 1990, Freeland worked as an intern for the United Press International in London before receiving a Rhodes Scholarship and completing her MA in Slavonic Studies at the University of Oxford in 1993. She then transitioned to journalism, working as a freelance journalist for the Financial Times, the Washington Post, and the Economist, while working in the newly independent Ukraine. Freeland later worked for the Financial Times in London as a deputy editor and then as an editor for its weekend edition, the FT.com, and UK News. Freeland then served as the deputy editor of the Globe and Mail and the global editor at large of Reuters. During this time, she also published 2 books: Sale of the Century, Russia's Wild Ride from Communism to Capitalism, which was an account of privatization in Russia, as well as Plutocrats, The Rise of a New Global Super Rich and the Fall of Everyone Else. This was a New York Times bestseller and winner of the 2013 Lionel Gelber Prize for Nonfiction Reporting on Foreign Affairs. In 2013, Chrystia Freeland left journalism to enter politics, winning the MP seat for the Toronto Centre. Then after the riding redistribution of 2012 and 2013, the University Rosedale riding in 2015. On November 4, 2015, newly elected Prime Minister Justin Trudeau chose Freeland as Minister for International Trade in his first cabinet. That's why y'all were hotline blinging. In a cabinet shuffle on January 10, 2017, Freeland was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, replacing Stéphane Dion as the head of Trudeau's foreign policy. I thought that was the hockey player for a minute, but that's Dion Phaneuf. My bad, hockey fans. After the 2019 federal election, she was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Freeland remained in charge of Canada-United States relations, including the ratification of a renegotiated free trade agreement with the United States and Mexico, CUSMA, roles that have traditionally resided with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The CUSMA was ratified in March 2020 at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic in Canada. This is the agreement that Trump is calling horrible after he signed it. Like, he set it up. You can't make this shit up. Chrystia Freeland was at the forefront of the Canadian government's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine in late February 2022, and she was the first to call for sanctions on the Central Bank of Russia, which were eventually imposed. On December 16, 2024, Freeland unexpectedly resigned from the Trudeau cabinet hours before she was to deliver the fall economic statement, citing policy disagreements with Trudeau on tax breaks, disbursements, and tariffs proposed by the U.S. President Donald Trump on Canadian goods. On January 17, 2025, Chrystia Freeland announced her candidacy for the 2025 Liberal Party of Canada leadership election, shocking absolutely no one, as she seemed to be the next in line in the leadership race anyways. Chrystia Freeland is endorsed by all these people, also a lot. Chrystia Freeland is running under the campaign slogan, Fight for Canada. Chrystia Freeland intends to replace carbon tax with a system collaboratively developed with the provinces and territories, scrap capital gains tax increase, implement automatic leadership reviews at permanent biennial conventions, spend 2% of GDP defense, the NATO target, by 2027, in part enlarging the military and increasing troop wages by 50%, cut second income tax bracket rate from 20.5% to 19%, cap profit margins on essential goods and make shrinkflation illegal, scrap GST on new homes worth up to $1.5 million for first-time buyers, cap credit card interest rates at 15%, working towards 10%, build 100,000 more $10 a day childcare spots by requiring new or renovated federal offices to include daycare, cap cabinet at 20 ministers. If Trump tariffs happen, offer Canadian doctors in the U.S. $200,000 and nurses $100,000 to return to Canada. Scrap trade barriers on agriculture, transportation, and alcohol. Enhance tax incentives for critical minerals workers. Tie the number of new immigrants to housing availability. Bring back rent-to-own programs. Give renters credit for on-time rent payments. Build more modular housing factories and affordable housing. Impose dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. and 100% tariffs on Teslas. Export liquefied natural gas to Canada's allies. And ask Mark Carney to serve as finance minister. Last but not least, Karina Gould, who served as the MP for Burlington, Ontario since 2015. Born in Burlington, Gould spent a year in Mexico volunteering at an orphanage after high school, before earning a bachelor's in political science at McGill University and an MA in international relations at University of Oxford in England. At the age of 28, Gould defeated the Conservative incumbent Mike Wallace, who had represented the riding since 2006 federal election. Gould was named the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development and La Francophonie on December 2, 2015. On January 10, 2017, she was named Minister of Democratic Institutions, and she also became the President of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada. These appointments made her the youngest female cabinet minister in Canadian history, taking office at the age of 29. When I was 29, I was using my week's earnings on bottle service. Karina Gould has been credited as instrumental in both passing and defending Bill C-76, or the Elections Modernization Act, making significant amendments to the Canadian Elections Act, including numerous accommodations for voter accessibility, restrictions on third-party interference in election campaigns, and a prohibition on spending by foreign entities during elections. Gould became the Minister for International Development on November 20, 2019, a key position in Trudeau's foreign policy. As minister, Gould was responsible for implementing Canada's feminist international assistance policy, which targets gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls around the world. Gould was shuffled to the Families, Children and Social Development portfolio on October 26, 2021. As minister, Gould was responsible for signing early learning and childcare agreements with Alberta, New Brunswick, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and Ontario. These agreements aim to reduce average childcare costs to $10 per day by 2026. During the spring and summer of 2022, the government received criticism regarding long passport processing times, which fell under Gould's ministerial responsibilities. Service Canada had warned of high demand for passport applications to come following the loosening of pandemic restrictions, which the government had underestimated. Slow processing times led to lengthy delays, forcing many Canadians to cancel travel plans. In early 2023, under Gould's leadership, Service Canada had returned the passport program to a steady rate, reducing processing times and virtually eliminating the backlog of passport requests. Gould was then appointed leader of the government in the House of Commons in July 2023. Gould announced her candidacy in the 2025 Liberal Party leadership election on January 18, 2025, resigning as government House leader to run the race. Karina Gould is endorsed by these people behind me. Karina Gould is running under the campaign slogan, "Meet the Moment." Karina Gould intends to cancel the April carbon tax increase and create a viable alternative, scrap capital gains tax increases, permanently remove GST for children's clothing, diapers, strollers, and car seats, reduce GST to 4% for 1 year, increase corporate tax rate from 15% to 17% on companies that make over $500 million in profits per year, offer a $2,000 tax credit on the provincial land transfer tax and interest-free loans worth up to 50% of the home's purchase price to first-time homebuyers, spend 2% of GDP on defense, the NATO target, by 2027 by increasing troop wages and improving procurement, widen eligibility for employment insurance, modernize EI, and bolster supports for seniors and disabled people, introduce a universal basic income program, exempt supply management from future trade negotiations, bolster Competition Bureau's powers to better investigate price gouging and overpricing, expand cooperative housing and accelerate modular housing construction, and support a citizens' assembly on electoral reform, but wants a referendum on any plan. So, there you have it, the candidates for the Liberal leadership race, and for all intents and purposes, the Prime Minister of Canada for the next 6 months. Frank Baylis, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and Karina Gould. All right, so how do you vote, right? Go to liberal.ca/how-to-vote, and the link will be in the description, and you're going to have to register as a Liberal, but don't worry, this isn't going to be a red stain on you. It's just because only party members can vote. This affects every Canadian, so just do it to vote. You can still vote for whoever you want to vote for in October. After that, you want to follow the on-screen instructions, and you'll be able to make your vote for the next Prime Minister. Again, this is going to be the next Prime Minister until October, so every Canadian vote counts. Hopefully this video can help you make an informed decision on who you want to support. I try my best to leave my bias out of this video and just give the readily available online information and policies, but I'm only human.
I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me.
Don't put the blame on me. Don't forget to vote tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I'll be doing another one of these for the upcoming October federal election. There will be a little bit more details, so stay tuned, like and subscribe to be up to date for whenever I post about politics, and don't forget to buy Canadian. I'll see you later. Cheers.